So here we have a comparison of what I landed on. I think I'm going to personally shoot is what I have been shooting is a 3-degree right helical. I still have a couple things I'm going to work out, but I can tell you that the reason why I'm going with the right is because of the whole threading of a broadhead and so on and so forth. And a lot of these broadheads don't have that little rubber grommet to keep them in. And I'm thinking about shooting a single bevel, so I'm not entirely sure that I'll be able to get a left helical single bevel that I like. Anyhow, so that's why I think I might stick with the 3-degree right helical, although there was a mechanical advantage to going with the 3-degree left helical, as I mentioned in the other. So if you look at these different Vanes, the number that counts right here is this percentage of loss. And it's crazy because this Max Hunter is just under 6% percentage of loss. So over the flight of 80 yards, the trajectory of 80 yards, it loses the least amount of speed. It leaves the bow at 285 and it hits at 80 at 268.5. That's 7.5 feet per second faster than what I was shooting, which is the Blazer. The caveat to that is I haven't found that the Max Hunter steers broadheads as well as the Blazer does. Their groups are good, but the Blazers are much tighter. The Max Stealth was a little bit better than the Max Hunter. The AAE hybrid, which is basically a Blazer Vane, steered the broadheads very good, and they did have just 0.5% less loss. So that might be a consideration to get the best of both worlds, get a little bit more efficiency. So, but for now, I'm sticking with the Blazers because I would rather have an accurate arrow than a faster arrow. So it might just be the tune on my bow, and I'm kind of working through that right now. But for now, these are the numbers. Consider them. But if you really look at it, you know, except for the Max Hunter, 5, 6, 4, and even 3 are pretty much within 1% of each other. But this is a much bigger jump up. So I was pretty impressed with that number. Hopefully, I can make the Max Hunters steer the steer the broadheads as well as the Blazers do. But if not, I'm going to go with the Blazer. So this is some really interesting data right here, not directly related to Vane testing, but we figured out during this process that every time we used a weaker spine arrow or loaded up the front and effectively created a weaker spine, the percentage of loss was a lot greater. Now, if you remember in the previous video, the Blazer 3-fletch, 3-degree helical to the right, 3-degree right helical was about 9% loss. And this is with a 340 spine. That loss goes up to 11.29. So consider that when you're thinking about super heavy FOC. If you're going to break down the spine of the arrow to a certain point, you may not be, the string's energy may not be transferring as efficiently over to the arrow because the arrow is flexing so much and absorbing a lot of that energy before it leaves your bow. If you think about, pushing a bowling ball This is a good example that my buddy Cal Davison brought up. You know, pushing a bowling ball with one of those pool noodles, it's going to have a hard time. But if you use that same pool noodle to push a softball, let's say, you should be able to do it pretty easy. So what happens is that you have enough force to move that bowling ball, but it's getting transferred and bending into the noodle. So just keep that in mind, that you don't want to break down your spine. You want to have a stiffer spine and get the most out of the power stroke of the bow.